information on this webinar is general information and should not be viewed as applicable to your individual situation and/or circumstance. We recommend that if you have questions on your individual situation, that you follow up with either your attorney or specific accountant. Please also understand that the information we are providing is extremely fluid, is changing on a daily basis, and often getting superseded. What we present here today may very likely be irrelevant or incorrect tomorrow. As such, please note that it is only accurate as of today, certainly not going forward, and that even as of today, the information is only our best understanding based on how we have reviewed or interpreted the information.
Welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us today. For those of you that are in Traverse City here in northern Michigan on this blustery winter day, for those of you who are privileged to be somewhere warmer and maybe south or otherwise, that's just not fair. But thank you for coming, and appreciate you joining in and logging in on our webinar. I think today's topic we're going to have is just pretty much talking about the new reality. I think generally speaking, we're feeling the reality is setting in. The mundane is coming in for the individuals that are getting used to having school at home, or business owners who are used to being out working, and individuals that are used to going to their jobs and are now stuck home. It's the new reality. It's the maybe the first week or two was somewhat exciting, different, novel, got to read some books, got to slow down, got to relax, and it's hitting us now that, whoa, we're here. This is real. This is what we're dealing with. A little bit of what you're going to feel on that reality is actually today's presentation. I had a fairly nice, well thought out PowerPoint presentation like I've had in the past, the last couple weeks. And to be honest, I scrapped it yesterday because the information that we're getting right now is so new and changing so quickly, and people's responses has changed a little bit here, that I felt it important to just step back and say, no, that PowerPoint presentation wasn't what was fitting for what we needed to talk to today, which is more a little bit of just that pulse and that feel of what I'm seeing individuals and business owners through discussions that I'm having with the people that we work with. And one biggest feel of that is everyone feels alone in this, that you're home. You're not used to being able to go out and see colleagues, see other friends and other individuals. And a big ramification of that is when you're experiencing things, whether it's dealing with unemployment, dealing with lower than normal checking accounts, dealing with the blues that are, of staying home, or the frustrations of being with the family or others. You're not alone in that, and I think it's important for everyone to see and hear that, because the questions that I'm getting, and we continue to get, echo the fact that everyone is going through a similar stage of this process. And so if I can hit one thing home today, it's that you're not alone in what you're going through. So reach out, give us a call, give other colleagues a call, give peer support groups, give friends. The internet and the social side of this, the social networking side, has been actually fantastic through this process. But just know that as you're feeling frustrations in whatever realm of what you're doing, it's okay, and you're not alone in that. And so I wanted to kind of talk through, and especially given how quickly things are changing. I'm going to get to a little bit later we're going to talk about the Payroll Protection Program. And at this time last week, I was talking about getting the applications in and working through it. And I'm going to say that again, but a lot has changed on that program since we talked even just a week ago. A lot has changed even just today on that Payroll Protection Program. And so the news is changing so quickly. And you've heard me say that on every presentation we've had this last month and a half on how quickly it's changing, but it's only changing even faster now. And one thing I do see is as this news is coming out, as further information is coming out, that I would make sure you mention that don't feel like you're left behind, that maybe you made a wrong choice. There's a lot of people that are saying, well, because of X, then I'm left out and therefore I'm missing things. When things change, I'm not saying that we don't react. In fact, we need to react. We need to pivot. We need to adjust. But don't just throw out your past plan. If you've set a plan for a family budget, stick to that family budget. Adopt it and modify it, but stick with it. If you set a business budget, if you have set a plan to go for the PPP and we don't get it, then we're going to shift over to some secondary things. Just know there are other options out there as we work through. It doesn't mean that we're just going to change course altogether, but it does mean that what I want to get out is that it's important to continue on and be comfortable with the fact of a plan that you set in place, even when things change. Allow for the change, but know that you just got to keep moving forward. And then within that, you got to know that you have to do what's right for your individual situation, your business, your family, your situation that's there. When I have seen kind of a trend of going into this process of how we're trying to help everybody else out, and that's important to do. But throughout this process, I'm seeing over and over again where you have to step back and say, why am I doing these decisions and what are we doing? And are they right for the long term? Are they right for the right business thing? I'm seeing over and over again, or I'm having people over and over ask me, well, what am I missing out on? What's out there that I don't have, or what that other ones or people are getting that I'm not getting, and I'm seeing all these things out there. Take a step back and say, is that right for me? If it is, we should be pursuing it, whether it's the Payroll Protection Program, whether it's unemployment, whether it's a family budget, whether it's going to an online Zoom class, or whatever it is. Step back and say, is this what's right for you, for your situation, for your business, for your family? Just because your neighbor's doing it doesn't mean that it's the best thing for you. It might be, but it may not be. And so just know internally, as you're thinking and you're seeing all of this change and all of this news and all of the media, that it's okay to stick with a plan, to feel that plan, and then just progress forward on it. And I think you're going to see in this presentation, the style of this presentation again today, it's a little bit less of the formal side. I've actually asked a couple of colleagues. You're going to see Katie and Corinne come in and help. We're pushing ourselves out of our comfort zones as we present this information. But the idea of this information coming out there is that we want to get the information to you to help you make those decisions for your case and for your reality that you're dealing with. And within that reality, it's important to stay positive through all of this, that we can deal with some bad news, we can deal with what's coming, where we're at, but to remember that as we see in the media is pushing certain items, and friends are pushing certain things. It may not fit to your circumstance. And what you're seeing out there, yes, it's surreal, and it's exceptionalist, and they're trying to get a rise, whether it's your friends, whether it's your family, whether it's the media, but it may not apply to you. So keep focusing back on what's right for you, what's right for your business, what's right for your family, what's right through you as you go through this, and stay positive throughout that. Because if I can say anything, it's that I am feeling that people are feeling that pressure, that the checking accounts are starting to dwindle, that the cash flow has now stopped, or is slowed, or is entirely stopped. Whereas the first couple weeks of this, it was a novel idea. It was, I don't want to say fun, because it's not fun, but the optimism of, okay, I'm going to make it through this, and we're going to, cash flow is still coming in, and I'm going to cut costs. I think the reality is hitting. Personal budgets are starting to be stretched. Business budgets are being stretched. The cash flow is slowing down, and that's, you're not alone in that. Whether you're an individual, whether you're a family, whether you're a business, know that everyone is going through that. That is, I said earlier in a presentation that none of this is unanticipated. We don't want this to happen, but the reason that there's stimulus dollars out there, the reason that there's these resources out there, is because they anticipated that this was going to happen, that this shortage of cash flow is going to happen. I've had lots of discussions on what happens if it goes beyond May 1st or May 15th, or what does that look like. We can speculate and hypothesize on lots of things. But what I can tell you today is that people are feeling it. Businesses are feeling it all across the board, on a cash flow side, on a stress side, on a depression side, on a relationship side, all across the board, people are feeling it. And so what I'm going to talk to right now is just on what you can be doing at the individual or the business level for cash flow. As you're seeing cash flow coming through and you're seeing that compression, you got to take stock. You got to step back and take a moment to really assess where are things going and what's doing it. So the first step I would tell you is assess your cash level. You've heard people talk cash is king. That certainly is the case, but assess what you have and be realistic. If you're a business and you've got $400,000 in a checking account, great, let's deal with that. But that $400,000 may go very quickly. Or you might be a business that has $1,000 in a checking account, or a family that has $300 in a checking account, or $40,000. The number doesn't matter, and the number zeros don't matter, because it's all relative to your particular circumstance. So take a stock of what you have, and then determine how long it's going to go. So pencil out or Excel out. I mean, I'd love to believe that everyone is going to pull out an Excel spreadsheet and make a nice 13-week cash flow with this. But if it comes down to a piece of paper and a napkin, great. Pencil whatever it is. Take a stock of where your cash is today, and then draw out a roadmap of what's coming up, what's coming through. I mean, within industry, people talk about this as what's called a 13-week cash flow, which says, okay, for the next 13 weeks, what's my ins, what's coming in the door, and what's going out. I'd tell you right now, I wouldn't even worry about a 13-week cash flow. We'll get there. Right now, start with a 4-week cash flow, or maybe a 1-week cash flow. Do it by day, and just make the assessment of, okay, where is my cash coming from, and where is it going out? And getting a good game plan of what's there, and then prioritizing that. A lot of the stimulus, people focused on just the immediate PPP or the immediate, 1 or 2 programs. There are actually fairly high level of number of stimulus packages that are out there that you may not even thought of at the first step, but that are now just starting to kick in and that are coming through, whether it's through your mortgage payment deferrals or through rent adjustments or through other things that are there and available. They're there for a reason. As you walk through and you can say, okay, as I prioritize my expenses, what do I need to adjust? What do I need? What do I pay today? What do I have to defer off? Where am I doing? And then you start doing if-then statements of, well, if it starts back up in a week, well, here's what it's going to look like. But if it doesn't, well, then here's my plan. So you start strategizing a little bit so that way you're thinking more proactively rather than reactively. And you're knowing which of the invoices you can afford or work to not pay versus to pay. Or you can make the assessment, you know what? Through this process, I feel pretty good that we know that we can make it through for another 8 weeks. And so we're good based on this now for 8 weeks. And you feel comfortable that you can pay the bills and keep those dollars going to those businesses as well. So take a step back, assess where you're at, and then go through that process, because whether it's going to result in a good result where you feel comfortable with what you are, then at least you feel comfortable. Or if it doesn't, you're thinking ahead to determine what is it you have to do today that's going to impact tomorrow and adjust tomorrow. Because if you wait until tomorrow to see that, it's going to be too late. And within that, you might find, though, you know what, we went for a particular stimulus package, and it might not have been the right one because maybe it was more important to get an urgency dollars that are emergency today that might be smaller, but they're going to get it to there today, and that's going to keep the doors open, versus something that might be longer range. Or you may say, you know what, I thought that I had to go for the emergency, but I'm actually okay. We can make it through this process. I might shift gears and go towards another stimulus package or another dollar amount or another program that might come later but result in more dollars. So it helps you kind of make those decisions. And then within that kind of budget, both personal and individual level, it's to determine where is your cash going. And so that way you can start having communication with those vendors and where those dollars are going. Whether that communication is, oh, well, maybe I don't need that subscription for the credit lock, or maybe I do. I'm not giving what to spend dollars and what not to. Rather, it allows you to identify where you're spending your dollars and make accounts for it and make adjustments for it. That, well, do I make that payment? The Adobe subscription that doesn't necessarily fit into utilities, but I do need it for work. Well, maybe I have to pay that. So, okay, now I need to allocate some dollars for that. Or my insurance. Well, that's not necessarily a utility, or is it? You can ask the questions of where that fits within this particular programs and do I spend it, or do I make those payments because you know what, it's going to come out automatically tomorrow, or do I stop that and call them and say I need to change those? So it allows you to shift and move more freely because you're going through the process of identifying where are your costs going through. And if nothing else through this whole process, it's going to make you a smarter individual on your personal side or as the smartest business owner as you dive into where your expenses are, and you're going to really look at where your costs are going. And it's going to make you as a healthy organization because of that. And here's where the accountant in me comes through and tells you, unfortunately, it's going to only get worse before it gets better. We kind of, as a phase-wise of where things are going, we saw the early phase, which is AR tends to come in on a 30 to 60 day lag, that we are now seeing the end of that. Well, that happens again on the way back, coming back into it. And so even if we were to start our economy back up tomorrow, both at the individual level, the business level, if it starts tomorrow, you have to ramp back up. And inevitably, for every circumstance, ramping up costs dollars faster than it's going to come in. And so you are going to have to spend dollars out sooner, faster, quicker, and more before they come back in. And so if you can't do it now, where we're at in the point of the recession, it's only going to get worse. And so take that heed and take that advice that you need to be thinking forward of not only how we're going to make it through these next 2 weeks, but how are we going to build back up on that capital as we go forward and the economy starts back up. Are you ready to start going on that process? And that's where that communication is so important, is because you have to be working through, you have to be thinking through these. And then, maybe deferring some of the payments for a little while may not be what you want, but that's what's going to make you to get forward, because you need to be able to pull back the employees to turn around and pay the employees before you can pay other bills, and prioritizing how that happens. So we look through. Now what I want to focus a little bit is shifting from the new reality into what is part of our new reality, is the ever-changing and completely confusing different incentive programs that are out there. The first one I want to talk about is the Recovery Rebate. I always start our discussions on those. That's the $1,200 per person that's coming out to the individual level. That is coming out, that has come out for many people. You should be checking your accounts to see if it is in. If it's not there and you expect it to be there, you can go online to the IRS website. Go to the IRS website. Don't go to third parties for this. The only one that you have there is the IRS website. They make it pretty clear. You can check on the status of that. However, I'm going to give one big, gigantic caveat on that. They came out with this great website, and we touted it as well as being the one that if they don't have your account information, you can go onto the website and provide it. I will tell you that if you have tried that link, either the I haven't filed before and I don't need to link, or the I have filed and my income was too high, or I filed in the past and I've always paid. There's two different links there. Neither of those links are perfect, and in fact, the one is downright doesn't solve anything, because when you go into the one that says, okay, if you've filed a tax return before and you owe, the only way it works is if they have your account information to verify, so the bank account information to verify against what they have. Well, if they don't have your account information, that defeats the purpose of why you're going to there anyway. So know that we have had many, many calls on this, and that you are not alone, that yes, that website is not at what it was supposed to be. I can't tell you whether they're trying to improve it. I hope they are. But know that frustration that you're feeling, you're not alone in that. My kids hear me talking on the phone a lot lately, and they have echoed that and say, Dad, is that all you say, that you're not alone in that? We echo that thought, and I can't disagree with it, because over and over and over again I say, yes, we're all going through this process. What you're feeling, don't feel like you're alone. Just know that it's there. You're not doing something wrong. It's that the systems maybe aren't in place. They're working on it and they're improving it. So know that site is there to check, but also know that it's very likely that it's not working as well, which again doesn't help things other than just know that you're in it together. Next, I'm going to shift to the PPP, which is the Payroll Protection Program. We're going to spend a good amount of time on today's discussion for those of you that did get, and there are several that have gotten this funding, on exactly how you're going to record it in QuickBooks and how you're going to track some of those spending and what some of the allowable costs are. And that's where Katie and Corinne are going to, on a pre-recorded session, come in and kind of overlay on this and help us through that process. But I want to give a general update here on where that program is. So when we presented last week, it was still ramping through, going through. We came a call that said we think it's going to be coming short, and it did. On Thursday, it ran out of funds, and they stopped. They put a halt both to the PPP as well as the EIDL program. It ran. The funds are gone. Now, good news is that they are going through the process today, and many of you are aware of, and today and tomorrow, when they look to be extending another round of it. The program was overall a success, despite what the media may be pushing out there. The funds are making their way into it. Yes, there were a plethora of bumps and bruises along the way. What I would challenge everyone that's listening here is, I implore everyone to think through, it's not any one person or organization's fault. It's not the government's fault that they didn't get the dollars out. It's not the bank's fault that they didn't push it through. They got handed something and were expected to push the dollars out on a brand new program 2 days later. It's not your fault. It's not the accountants or the bankers. It's everyone is going through this all together. But the funds did dry up. We had talked about that ahead of time, saying that this was going to be a highly oversubscribed program, that we were pushing to get it out there. Know that that's going to be the same thing if this next round goes through. So if the PPP is what makes sense for your organization, don't feel that it's gone. Just know that there could be a second round, and if that was the right option for your business, then make sure that you're talking with the banker and that you've got your application in there. Many banks are prepping for this second round of funding to come and are making you go through the process, not again, but to just recertify and reinsure that what you put in the first time is the correct one, and to make sure that you still are interested in the PPP program. So make a conscious effort to be proactive on ensuring that you are in line and that you're going. I'm predicting that it's going to go very quickly, because what's happening here is all these entities are now in line and are solidifying everything. And so when it does come back in, there's going to be a queue, and the bank's going to be pushing submit, and going through. And so you want to make sure that you are in that line and then in that order to be part of that application process. I also do want to step back and say that if it comes out that the PPP runs out again, or you miss this first round, and then maybe it's the second round you miss again, there are other alternatives for most entities and most organizations. And so maybe it's not as good as what the PPP was. Maybe that's going to result in that would have resulted in a higher dollar amount. But no, there are other alternatives out there. There's the employee retention credit, and there's a few others that could apply. And maybe it was the best case was to go for the PPP. But don't feel like it's throw it up and just be done with it if you miss it. If you get it, great, keep pushing. Keep asking those questions to the bankers, to us, to make sure that you got the program and all the documentation in place. I'm challenging everyone that's listening on this phone call to step back and say, okay, if you got it, listen to how we're going to apply it. If you didn't get it, ask yourself why you didn't, and make sure you're in line for getting it going forward, if it makes sense for you. The one group that I would stress, and I can't stress this enough, is if you're self-employed, you should be looking at whether the PPP makes sense, because there's very few other programs that apply for you. The employee retention credit does not apply. The tax holiday does not apply. The EIDL does not apply. So what you're looking at as a self-employed individual is unemployment and the PPP. And so you should be asking yourself, as an unemployed individual, as a self-employed individual, are you ready and do you have everything you need? What does that mean? You need to have your 2019 tax return done and ready. And so if we're sitting on it, let us know. We have put a priority on getting those done. If your other accountant has them, get them in. If you don't have the information in, get it in and work through it. Now, if you don't have the information in already, it may not make it through fast enough, but push yourself to get there. Or to at least make the conclusion that it maybe doesn't make sense. That's possible as well, but to at least think through whether it does or doesn't make sense and be ready for it. I would also mention here that I think this is where we are seeing the importance of having a good, strong relationship with your professionals, both accountants, attorneys, but then bankers as well. And so I can't tell you how many discussions I've had over the last couple of days where people are frustrated with their bank or their banker and said, well, I can't believe I missed it. Some of them, I'm with you on it. I struggle and I say, yeah, there's no reason that you shouldn't have not gotten it. But what I would challenge you is, A, it's not the individual banker or bank's fault. They are working their way through this process just like you are and are confined within the constraints of what they have. So please give some grace to them as they're working through the process. But then step back and say, okay, well, you know what? Maybe this particular bank wasn't the right one. Or maybe it was. So don't just jump ship. And I'm alluding to the fact that I have a lot of people that didn't get in this first round that are bad-mouthing or pushing the banks that they were at, and then at the same time also saying, well, should I jump to another bank? I'm not saying don't, but I'm not saying do either. I'm saying whenever you make a business decision, don't make it purely because of one particular thing, just because of the PPP program, or just because of an NSF charge, or just because of they didn't extend credit on my mortgage payment. It goes all across the board for both individuals, businesses, retirees, all throughout it. Step back and say, well, is this the right bank? Is this the right accountant? Is this the right financial advisor? Is this the right attorney? You should be asking you that on a regular basis. And hopefully the answer is, you know what? It was the right answer. They are the right. There is a bump, but we're still good with it, and we're gonna shift and we're gonna pivot and go a different direction. But it's the opportunity for you to say, well, if it wasn't the right answer, then you should be looking at maybe doing a holistic switch. But it shouldn't be an overnight decision. It should be a thought-out, conclusive reason why to do a shift. And so I say that because if you are thinking that, know that you're not alone. But then B, don't just make a rash decision here just today because of one response on one particular thing. Step back. That doesn't mean I'm not saying don't move, but it doesn't mean I am saying move either. Think through that process and have an honest discussion with the banker, with the professional, whatever it is or whoever it is, insurance, all across the board. If you're feeling left out or you're feeling like something didn't go right, tell them, talk to them. Full disclosure, it could be us that we didn't get a tax return done in time, or because we're so pushing different things. Let us know, talk with us. It's not our goal to leave anyone in the dust, but it happens. And so we would rather have people talk through with your banker, with everybody. So just be in communication with them and make those decisions on the long range, what makes the right decision for your individual situation, for your business, for whoever it is. Make it be the right reason when you're going to move or shift. Very quickly on the EIDL, so that is the one that early on I had very high hopes of this program. I still have high hopes on the program because I think this is one actually that could really come out to really help businesses on this long-term cash need that are really tight cash flow wise. But as with the PPP, it is also out of money. We have seen a few businesses get funded under the PPP or under the EIDL program. But the ones that we have seen funded are the ones that applied on the very early application. So the helping understand that the employee or the economic injury disaster loan was actually an old program. It was designed for when there are natural disasters in a particular region. So say it's the fires in California or a hurricane in Florida or the floods in Louisiana. It's designed for that style. So those that actually applied under the old application process, 10-page long application, those we are seeing funding through. We have not seen any funding come through on the new streamlined one. They focused on the PPP program and the funds ran out there. I don't know whether or not it's going to continue or where it's going to go. The current proposed legislation that's looking to be passed here this week does have a special carve out for the EIDL, so that if you don't go for the PPP and instead go for the EIDL, I'm hoping that it's there. But just know that for many, the decision to apply still makes sense. So if you applied, you didn't get it, it didn't take that much to go through the process. And if we get it, then great. We'll be pleasantly surprised with what was there. I do want to mention here very briefly, there is a new program grant out there through this Michigan Small Business. I would tell you that that's there. If you want a link for it, I'd be happy to send it if you haven't seen it. Many banks are sending it out. It's out on social media. It's out on our website. It's out elsewhere. I definitely can't tell you not to apply, and I think you should if you want to spend the time. What I will say is definitely that program is going to be way oversubscribed. So know that if you're applying, ask yourself, is it worth your time? Again, I'm not saying don't do it, but ask yourself, are you really in need of these dollars? Do you really need them? Because this is going to go for the very, very hardest hit. It is a needs-based application. And so if you're still running and you're still operating, maybe limping along, probably going to go for someone else. Not saying it will, but just, really assess whether it made sense. But if you want a link for that, let me know, let any of the accountants here know, or they're also out on the website. And then lastly, where I am seeing coming forward again is the employee retention credit. I've talked about it throughout all of my seminars as being one of those rocks that I continue to see as being growing in popularity. There are several that took down that path right up front in saying that this made sense for them to go into because their situation, it made sense. For ones that were trying for the PPP and maybe didn't get it, now are reevaluating. I continue to see the benefit of the employee retention credit in many situations. Again, I'm not saying that the PPT is bad. In fact, if that's the right answer, it's the right answer for many programs or many businesses. But if it's not, we can do a pivot and shift over to the employee retention credit. And so the rule or the takeaway that I want you to hear from that is if the PPP doesn't happen, if you missed the first round and you don't have the second one, or you missed the second round, we can shift over to the employee retention credit, and then we can really start, ramping in on what makes sense there. Key there is that does not apply to the self-employed. So if you're self-employed, go back and look over at the PPP program. But if you have employees, there are actually quite a few pros for the employee retention credit. So where I want to shift to now is for those of you that did get the PPP program, we want to dive in a little deeper on how to actually record it. What does it look like? What are some allowable costs for this? I'm going to start this off and say just thank you so much for Katie and Corinne for being willing to step up and really help on this. I joke we're accountants here. We had the social distancing thing down long ago. We aren't ones that love getting behind cameras, and it's actually very hard for us to do. And so I ask for continued thank for continued support as we push ourselves as well to get out and pass this information along to you. And so we are doing our best to get this information out. Know that both Corinne, Katie, as well as the other accountants here, Jim, Tashua, everybody here, we're available for questions. So if this next section spurs a thought, give us a call, let us know, and we're willing to work through it. Once this section is done, I am going to come back as well. So this was a pre-recorded section, but I am going to come back on and kind of finish a few other items too. And so on that note, Steve, if you can push over for Corinne and Katie.
Hi, I'm Katie from Intrust CPA.
I'm Corinne.
And we're going to take a deep dive into the Payroll Protection Program, what you need to do inside of QuickBooks to help track and record this loan if you were to grant it. So I'll go over to the computer. So on this copy of QuickBooks, I have everything set up, and I'll go over the highlights, and then we'll go over the details in a different QuickBooks. So the first step is determining which checking account to use. There's the method that if the bank requires a separate bank account, you would have a separate PPP checking account. If they don't require one, then you can create a sub-account of your checking account for PPP, and it'll help you track the balance, but the reconciliation, the check stock, everything else will be seamless as far as not needing to do anything extra other than this tracking step that we'll show you later inside of QuickBooks. Another new thing is you're going to have a new liability for the time being, which will be the PPP loan down here for $20,000 in this case. And then I'm going to step over to the profit and loss because there's the requirement that you're using this for certain expenses. One of the main one is payroll. So we have gross payroll, we have payroll taxes. other accounts or qualified uses of the Payroll Protection Program are the insurance, if it's workman's comp insurance, also interest, and a few other items. This method is using a separate account with sub-accounts to make it clear. The other method is using a class, which uses the same accounts that you have set up. It simply triggers this class tracking that the PPP column is showing you here. And then lastly, once your 8-week period is over, then you'll come and try to figure out how much of the loan will be forgiven. And with that, you're going to have, and the amount that's forgiven is non-taxable, but we have to move it over to the profit and loss, and then your accountant will make sure that it's not taxable on your tax return. It is considered other income here, and as this PPP loan forgiveness. So those are the 4 steps, and now we'll dive into the details here in this other company. So step 1 is setting up the bank account. And like I said before, the bank is either going to require you to have a separate account, and that is probably going to mean you're going to need separate check stack or some other way to, fully separate that account into a new account that'll show up as a separate bank statement. So that is the first method. The second method is probably the one the accountants are going to want and might prefer. And that is, is just setting up a sub-account. So you're going to start by creating a new account. And then making it a sub-account of your regular checking account. And you can see that right now there's no money in there. The next step will show how to get that funded. But what's nice about this is this checking account is still the one you're going to reconcile, and it's going to be pretty seamless as far as being able to have it one account, and it's just inside of QuickBooks. You're going to be able to track the money that comes in once the loan is granted, and then as expenses are used up, then it'll track your balance quickly to know, how much more you have to spend for the payroll and other designated expenses. But again, the point of this is to fund payroll. So I'm going to have Corinne show you the next step.
Okay, so you've received the money, and you're going to now record that deposit. We're going to go to Make Deposits. We're going to want to pick that checking account that you're going to be putting that deposit into. And we're going to create a new account here. PPP loan. We're going to set that up as a long-term liability. And we're going to say you received $20,000. I'm sorry. We're going to save that. And when we go to the profit and loss, when you go to the balance sheet, you're going to see that $20,000 is in that PPP account. And then you're also going to see the $20,000 in your long-term liability account. That's how you'll record the money when it comes into you. I'm going to send it over to Katie.
Okay, and so then I'm also going to have come back to the balance sheet. And so that's using the sub-account method, and then I'm just going to briefly go into the reconcile option. We'll just say 0 ending balance for now. And then you'll see that $20,000 coming in. Okay, so the next step is when you need to record an expense. So let's say it's going to be a easy one, like a utility payment. So we're going to come in and write a check. We're going to say it's coming from the PPP account. This is if a separate bank account was needed. Let's use DTE for right now. And now we have to also talk about how we're going to track the expenses. So you're going to have a utilities account set up. One method for being able to pull a nice report later is having a class called PPP. So I'm going to have that set up here. So this is going to do a couple things. So if this was a separate bank account, it's going to show that $50 was spent from that PPP account. I'm going to come in here and change this real fast to the sub account of the PPP, because again, there's two different methods to record that. It's the wrong account. So now we see that the $20,000 came in and we spent $50 for the utilities. So then we can quickly see what the remaining balance of that loan is. I'm going to open up a profit and loss by class here, and we see this PPP column that shows up. This is going to allow you to use your current expense account classification and just add that level of detail for the class, which is saying it's a PPP expense. The other method is creating a separate PPP grouping, so it would be like PPP here and then utilities down here. So I'll show you that real quick. So there's a couple new accounts to add. I'm going to call this payroll tax expenses. And then I'm also going to create another new account. That is utilities. And this is the sub account. And then I'm going to come back here, and since this check is already here, I'm just going to modify it to use this new account. Which is the sub account. And then if we would just need to run a regular profit and loss, which would then show us the PPP utilities. So I'm also going to show you just the journal entry method of recording your payroll for this inside of QuickBooks. So we'll we'll set up a new wage account. And this is going to be a sub-account of the PPP. Now it's only the SUTA expenses, your state unemployment, that is eligible for being forgiven under the Payroll Protection Program. So I'm only going to show that portion of it. And then this is where you're saying that you have these expenses, wages and payroll taxes, and then it has to come from a bank account. And again, we have the two methods, but it's going to depend upon which one your bank is requiring. Some are going to require the separate bank account, so you'd select that one. If not, then you just have this sub-account of the PPP, and that's going to show a decrease of $5,500 of that account. So then we have wages and SUTA expenses and the utilities that are all being used up by the PPP loan. And then we also have a decrease in the PPP balance here from those activities. The same thing is true with if you wanted to use these same wage accounts and add the class tracking of PPP. So whether you had those accounts set up, that method will work as well. Let's go over here to the, now you see that those are flagged under the PPP class. Okay, so I think our last step after you get funded, you're tracking everything over the 8-week period, then you need to work with your bank on loan forgiveness. So I'll pass it over to Corinne to have her show you that.
Okay, so when your 8-week period's up, you're going to need to submit a lot of documentation to your banker, and then they're going to determine how much money becomes forgivable. We're going to create a journal entry. And we'll say, and within that journal entry, we're going to
we're going to debit the
I'm sorry, Katie.
the loan account.
Okay. All right, so once your banker's given you a total, say you have $15,000, that's going to become forgivable, and you are also going to put it to the loan forgiveness.
And this will also be a new account that you set up.
Yes. So when we create that account, that becomes an other income account. So now when you go to your balance sheet, that liability account, I need to use the mouse here. The other liability account is showing that you still owe the $5,000. And then the other account that will show up, as Katie said, on your profit and loss, and then your accountant will make sure that that money becomes non-taxable as income. Okay.
All right, so I'll just recap here. There's going to be the two methods for recording the bank account, whether you have a separate bank account or the sub account. Either one works. It's just a little bit different tracking. The loan's going to be the same under either method. The loan comes in, and then the forgiveness reduces that down, leaving the remaining loan balance. And then when we have the profit and loss, this is where in the end you're going to have all of these expenses that, were the use of the PPP loan. Then down below is where we have the loan forgiveness side of it that for now shows up as income. I'm not seeing it here, but maybe I need to expand the date range. Disappeared. Let me check that. Oh, that's oh, it got recorded as 6/30 of 2020. That's why. Get that refreshed here. So now we have loan forgiveness. That does show up like it's going to be income, but it's not. Your accountant will make that magically go away. So that is a deep dive into the payroll protection loan tracking inside of QuickBooks. I hope that was helpful. If you have any questions, feel free to call the office for more one-on-one tips and guidance that will come. But thanks for watching. Thanks.
And just like that, Katie and Corinne are gone, and I'm back here. So thanks to the modern technology for that, and also a big thank you to Steve, Lauren, and Stan, who have been working countless hours behind the scenes to help us pull this together. So just a big thank you to everyone there for helping. That was quite detailed as we dove into the details of actually putting in how to transact an actual PPP loan, some of the expenses that go with it. So know that why we wanted to include it here was to give you a little bit of a flavor of some of the other type of videos that we're going to be putting out coming forward. We'll probably peel that one out specifically from this presentation, so that way you'll be able to just see that section, and we'll have more of them like that to help you walk through some of those on maybe specific how-tos. Know that there are other opportunities or other resources that you can go to online on YouTube or otherwise that will also help you through those. We're not the only ones that are putting those out there, and so definitely don't want to just say it's just us. There's plenty out there that are going to show you how to do it. One thing I wanted to mention on the PPP expenses specifically is that as with everything else that's going through, it's changing on a regular basis, and all we're going to tell you here today is the information that we know today. One of the things that as we progress through this is it kind of as with waves is the first section was, okay, how do we apply? And then when do we apply? And where we're at right now is, okay, how do we actually spend the dollars of what's allowable and what's not allowable? The key thing that we keep getting in hit on that we're supposed to tell others is to keep in mind that it is incurred and paid during the 8-week period after your loan was funded. No, incurred and, it's an and, not an or, incurred and paid in that 8-week period. So let's think about that practically. Well, payroll, that's the whole point of this payroll protection program, is to pay payroll. Well, you pay people in arrears. So you pay wages from Monday through Saturday, and you don't pay it till the following Thursday. So the key there is that we have to have it incurred during that period as well as paid during that period. Now, I can't sit here today and tell you that they may not that it's very possible that they're going to figure this glitch, if you will, in the system. They may figure that out, and I might be presenting in 6 weeks to say, oh, remember back 6 weeks ago, I told you we had to do paid and incurred, and it's not the case. I'm hoping, for everyone's sake, that actually happens, that I'm proved wrong on this. But as of right now, everyone needs to hear that it's paid and incurred. So what does that mean? Plan today that you're probably going to be needing to do a couple extra payroll runs to make sure that you have right at the end that you have all the right amount that's incurred as well as paid in that 8-week period. Plan on calling some of your utilities, because again, paid and incurred means you incurred it during that 8-week period, so it was actually rent from April 20th through May 20th, and paid by that 8-week period. So cell phone bills or your electric utilities. So we might have to be calling to get prepayment on some of those, or not prepayment, because you can't prepay, but to incur what was it actually for that period. Again, I see that as a little bit of a oops on the overall program. So hopefully we get clear guidance on that, but just right now know that we're pushing on the paid and incurred. I'm going to switch gears a little bit, and I know this video is going a little bit long, but we had quite a bit to talk about here today, and so please bear with us as we go through this. What's really prompting the topics of this video, again, are what we're seeing in questions and calls. And so I'm hoping that what we're sharing here is relevant and informational for what you're looking at right now. And the topic that we're going to talk about here is unemployment. And this ranges all across the board, whether you're a business owner, you're an individual, but unemployment is at that individual level as you're going through. And people are feeling it now. They're feeling the stress of having to have gone on the website and having to work through this process. A couple things I want to hit here. It's very easy for us to scold or shake our heads at state of Michigan or whatever state that you're in at their actual website. What I would tell you here is, again, keep it positive, please. Know that the state of Michigan did what they probably, if they had their choice, would take 2 years to build out a program, which is to put in a program that's to pay unemployment to the self-employed. They did it in a week and a half. By the way, that week and a half is probably too long because it's needed and that's how urgent it was. But understand that they put together a program that they would normally take months, if not years, to put together in a week and a half. And so if it feels like you're trying to shove a square peg down in a round hole, you probably are. But at the same time, just know it's not necessarily the state's fault. They're doing their best as well. So give it patience, give it grace as you work through that. And remember that everyone is going through it the same. A couple things that I hear on a regular basis is, the unemployment was denied. Probably. You have to keep going back and keep looking at it. That I haven't seen this pandemic, and I'm going to go over what this pandemic unemployment assistance is. That could be. And in fact, I keep at it, keep pushing at it, keep working through those processes. Interesting enough, the state did not start authorizing the pandemic unemployment assistance until April 20th. Well, as I sit here today, it's April 21st. That's yesterday. Most of you have probably already applied for unemployment if you're going to go that direction, and you're frustrated because you haven't gotten the paid. Well, that's correct, because they haven't even gotten to the point of where they can even certify it, let alone pay it out. So it is lagged as it's working through the system. And know there, again, you're not alone. You're not working through that. Everyone you're feeling this is feeling it. I would tell you we're going to have a link for some of these sites. The State of Michigan Unemployment Agency is actually doing a really good job of putting out guidance to help you walk through. They understand that many people have never been through the unemployment process before. It's all new. They get that. They understand. They also understand the frustrations that when you try to call, it doesn't go answered. The many states, actually Michigan is one of the only states that's actually still answering phone calls. Most states have they've stopped answering phone calls and it's entirely online. But know that they have videos out there that walk you through. And in fact, I was going to make a presentation on how to actually apply for the unemployment, and they came up with one. So I'm actually going to use the one that they came up with. I'm going to talk over a few of the sections here and some key points. But know that these videos are out there. So they're how to get a MiWAM account, how to log in for the first time, how to make a claim, how to file for the pandemic unemployment assistance. The videos are there. We're going to put links in this video down below as well as on our website, so know that they're there. But don't be afraid to look for the resources that are already developed. So as I go through here, you're going to hear the lady talking, and you're going to also hear me overlay a little bit as we go through this.
Go to michigan.gov/UIA and click on For Employees. Click on Sign In with My Login. There will be a brief
So here's where I like
wait
to say
for
that they
my
should have
login
elevator
to
music in the
appear.
background, because you have to sit here for a couple seconds. They make you, sometimes it's 50 seconds, sometimes it's shorter.
If you do not have a MiWAM account, click Sign Up. Fill in your name, email, and answer the verification question.
As you're working through this, to sign on to account, keep in mind that you have to create an account first, then you have to do a claim, and then you have to do a certification process. So it's not a once and done scenario. You have to continue to go back there and keep looking at it.
Read the terms and conditions and click I agree.
Write this down. Everyone's
Create a
unique and it's
user
very
ID
different.
and
So
password. Note the guidelines to the right. Enter your social security number and date of birth. Click Next Step. Click Submit. This takes you to the PUA application. Click Next Step. Click
So I want to pause here a second and highlight, this is an example of one of the videos that we're using to walk you through it. There are other ones out there. We're going to finish this one here. But I wanted to note one thing here. We oftentimes refer to unemployment, and then you hear MiWAM and you hear UIA. They're all referring to the same thing. So UIA is the Unemployment Insurance Agency that's there, and then your MiWAM account is the account that you have online with the unemployment agency. So those are some technical names that you might hear thrown around here. Where I want to highlight on this page, and this is the key page for the pandemic section of the unemployment, and this is new. So this is that new part that they put in. So there's the $362 state unemployment, and now there is the pandemic add-on to get you the $600 as well. This is also a requirement if that you are unemployed, or you're self-employed, or you're part-time employed, that you now qualify for, because you have to go through these steps. So these questions are important here as you go through it. I want to mention here, it's very important that you really understand the purposes of these questions. One question that I've seen on a regular basis get wrong is it asks, are you able to work? The answer for that is you have to say, yes, you are able to work, but you can't. So I've seen a lot of people have answered that as, no, I'm not able because I can't go into this to my work. That's a separate question. So you have to go look to the one that I can't go to work. So you have to take each question individually and separately. So can I work? Yes, I am physically able. My legs are moving, my arms are moving. I could work, but now I can't for some other reason. So walk through those. And that's very important, because I've seen a lot of people get denied because of answering that question incorrectly.
Answer the qualification questions.
Here you can go back. Usually you
Next
can't
step.
go back for unemployment,
If you
but
choose
for this
to
you
enter
can.
the tax year and income for that year, you will need to
This section here I want to hit pretty hard. This is where you're going to put in the information if you're self-employed. So keep in mind that the unemployment agency was designed for for employees, where the payroll company or QuickBooks or whatever payroll service you were using every month submitted information to the unemployment agency. So they had everything they need to determine unemployment. That's why if you're just a standard employee, the process is much easier because the information was already there. This is what they had to build out, was to determine how you get the information to the unemployment agency for them to know how they're going to base and determine what you get for unemployment. Here is where you're going to actually provide the information. So if you remember last week, I talked about how if you don't provide anything, you will get the $600 and the $161. That's the minimum. But if you want to apply more, you're going to do it here. And you're going to put it through this section here of where you put in 2009. And then there's two questions here. So enter the amount of earnings for contract wages or contract worker. And then here, this is the second section here for the business. Here's where I'm telling people, yes, we are trying to shove a square peg into a round hole. But ask yourself, what's the best way that I can get the information to the IRS, or to the state of Michigan, and to the unemployment agency, and be comfortable with the information you're giving them. So if you determine, well, I'm a self-employed with a S corporation, so I have a wage, but I also have earnings from the business, but I'm still self-employed. On one line, put your W-2 wages, and on the other line, put your net income from the business. If you're a Schedule C and you don't have wages, just pick a line and put it on there, and then we're going to show you where to upload the supporting documentation. But just get the information in there and be comfortable that you're not double dipping. Don't put more in there than you need to, but just be comfortable with the information that you're putting there. My recommendation is on this line you put your wages, and on this line you put your net income. If you're a Schedule C and you're truly self-employed, it just goes on that line.
Documentation to this claim.
This you only have to do once. So this is you filing the claim initially. And then once you file the claim, then you're done with that section of it. Here is where I would tell you that is where you're going to upload the information to support the numbers that you just put in. So again, where you're going to want to look at is your 2019 W-2 or a 1099 or your like a pay stub, or they could also have I'm telling people put your page 1 of your business return. So you can do more than one document. You can do your W-2 and your page 1 of the business return, or you could just do a 1099. This is where I'm going to be very clear, and I don't know the answer to this. They keep mentioning, they being the state and the unemployment, keep mentioning 1099, which is a gross number. So you get paid at a high, here's what you received in income, but then you have expenses. Logically, I would tell you, and from a conservative standpoint, you should use net income. That's what I'm telling people to make sure they use. Nowhere on this screen do they talk about net income. In fact, they talk about gross income. I can't tell you that's ethical or unethical to put in gross income versus net income. Logically, I would tell you that probably it makes sense to do net income. And if your net income plus your wages or just straight net income is greater than the $362 per week, just leave that and go with it. If it's different, then you're going to have to be in a situation where you would decide which is better to use, gross income or net income. It will always be gross income, but the question is whether that's a right answer, whether that's what they're truly trying to get to. I will point out here too that they also talk about the fact that you need to have a 1099. You don't. So if you don't have 1099s, you could also supply your Schedule C or something else to show how you're getting to the numbers. Any one of those documents will work to support what you have.
Click Add to attach your documents. Click Save and Next Step. Fill in your name information. Click Next Step. Enter your physical address. Click on Validate the address.
See what she just did there where she clicked that validate? That's an example of one that I've seen many people get stumped on. This particular one, and there's a few others, where you got to actually look in and watch to make sure you do that specific step. And if you don't, the actual application process doesn't complete. So watch for those. Watch for those little nuances. Oftentimes they have little exclamation marks next to them. But watch to make sure that if it's there, that you've actually walked through each particular step to make sure that you've hit everything that they're looking for.
Answer yes or no and click Next Step. Fill in contact information. Click Next Step. Answer the demographic information question.
And if you can actually find your actual occupation,
Click
you're doing
Search
pretty well
to
on
find
this.
your occupation code.
They're where they came up with the different thresholds and
Answer additional
categories, I'm not
questions
quite
and
sure.
click Next
Just
Step.
get as close as you can.
Select your payment method. You may choose a debit card or direct deposit. Click Next Step. Answer the correspondence question and click Next Step. Read the Unemployment Benefit Rights section and click I agree. Click Next Step. Read the PUA fraud notice and click I understand.
This is a very critical step. It's an easy step to click through, but it's one that I want to hit here, and as the conservative accountant, make sure I mention that this is where that ethical side of things are going to come in, and you're going to have to try to decide, is it appropriate for me to be claiming unemployment? They walk through the questions pretty clearly as to whether you qualify or you don't, whether you're working, whether you're getting paid. Walk through those steps. And if you find that you can't answer them, call us and maybe we can walk through them if you just need a second guidance. Do walk through them. But it is a pretty serious thing here that you're signing to and saying that you understand that you're meeting the qualifications to be able to claim for the unemployment.
Click Next Step. Review your information and click Save as a Draft. You will see your confirmation page and your application is complete.
Here's where I would tell you to print this because you get a confirmation number as well. This is just one example I use that is, I think, the most pertinent, which is the pandemic unemployment assistance and what almost everybody should be working through and making sure that they do this section of it. One thing with the unemployment and with MiWAM is there are lots of steps and phases. So you're going to go through and you're going to get denied first. And then once you're denied, you go back in and you have to redo this application. And then you're going to go through and they're going to think through it, and then you have to go back in and certify. So understand that it's not a one and done situation. You have to keep going back in, back checking to look to see if there's little exclamation marks flashing to show that, hey, you need to do something more and something different. And then once you get the actual application in, then you have to go in every 2 weeks and certify that you certify on a every 2 week basis on a week by week. So you're certifying for 2 particular weeks, 1 week and then 2 weeks. And so you do unemployment on a weekly basis. So with that, are we back up to me? Okay. Again, I recognize that this is going long, and I thank everyone for continuing to listen and made it through. So congratulations, you made it all the way through this section and through to where we are today. We're doing our best to get the information out as quickly as we can and as relevant as we can in making the links. I want to talk about one last thing here as we shift into wrapping up. And unfortunately, while I put it at the end, it's probably one of the most important things. And I've seen it come up on regular phone calls. It applies to the PPP. It applies to which program. It applies to the unemployment. And that's getting into the ethics of things. I can't tell you the number of times in the last weeks that I have had to deal with, well, should I do this? Or can I do this? And the fundamentally is, well, just because you can doesn't necessarily mean you should. And you have to ask yourself and step back, should you do some of these things? Should I claim unemployment? I'm not saying that you shouldn't, but what I'm saying is you have to ask yourself, and your situation might be different than someone else's. Most of you know I'm a Christian, I'm a strong Christian, as is Jeff and as is others here. I tell you that this is where, in situations like this is where I would recommend that where do you find it? You look to the Bible. You look to other sources that are going to give you advice on how to handle these situations. You'd be surprised on how many times the Bible talks about business and how to handle certain situations, whether it's debt, whether it's priorities of vendors. I mean, the Bible goes into that and talking about when and how you should pay vendors, in what order you should pay vendors, creditors, employees. If you want, I'd be happy to give you some references that are in there that talk through this. But just know that as you're forced with these situations, this is not a new thing. This has been something that's been around for thousands and thousands of years, and many that have gone before us have dealt with the same pressures that you're feeling. And time again, you have to see that what comes out on the other end are the businesses, the individuals that have taken it and put it from an ethical and a moral and integrity standpoint. Full disclosure, we're dealing with the same things that you are as we look to say, well, do we put this person on PPP or this person on sick leave and emergency leave? And we're forced with the same things that you are as well. And we have to step back and say, well, just because we can or just because we know the right answer doesn't mean that we shouldn't or that we should. I'm at a point, I'm not saying that you don't do something, because if you're right and you feel comfortable with it, you can document it and you feel that you've met the requirements. I'm not saying to shy away from things. I'm not saying to be aggressive or conservative. What I'm telling you is to make sure that you can feel comfortable with why you're doing what you're doing. Why do you feel that you can apply for unemployment, or that you can, or that you can't, Or why do we feel that this particular employee is a sick leave versus PPP versus the employee retention credit, all the way across the board? Or why did I pay this vendor versus that vendor? Or should I pay this vendor sooner than maybe I can? One actual question I've gotten is, I've gotten a whole lot of cash come in here because we're doing better than what we thought we were going to be doing. Should I sit on the dollars or should I put them out? There's a lot of guidance out there that tells you what way to go and what way not to go. And so just step back and ask yourself, from a moral and from an ethical and from a Christian point of view, what is the right way to do it? This is where I think you see the strength of having those moral compasses that are there, whether it's praying, whether it's talking to other business owners that are your sphere of influence and your peer group. Talk with them. Be open. And if you can't talk with someone about what you're doing, you got to probably second guess yourself there a little bit and see what's the right answer. Talk to professionals. Talk to us. Talk to your banker, your insurance agent. We're here to walk through all these different steps. And again, hear from me, if there's anything that you took away from today, is that you're not alone. That everyone is going through this, whether you're a single retiree, to a family, to a business owner, to an employee. All different hats are going through the same issues that you are. Be okay and know that you have to reach out for help, reach out for comfort, reach out and know that what you're doing and why you're doing it, and once you make that decision, that you feel good with that. So at that, I mean, I just know that we'll all get through this. It will be okay. It may get more difficult. It may get better. We don't know. But just know that we're here and we're all here together. So thank you for attending, and don't hesitate to give us a call.